Hey, Chad. Just waiting for Patriot sounds. I know he's active. He's been in Telegram.
But while we're waiting, did you see the news of that um, CZ got pardoned by Trump today?
I did see that. Everyone's freaking out, pardoning a criminal, but uh, I don't know what he was charged for was really necessarily morally wrong.
Uh,
Um,
what he supposedly what he did, or what he was convicted of, actually was um, allowing illicit funds being traded on Binance and not doing due diligence and yeah, kind of thing.
I thought wasn't it he just didn't get a proper license in the US or something like that? And therefore
There's a
there
little
it's
bit of that.
illicit.
Uh, Maybe. I mean, I'm not up to date on it, whatever. But my understanding was that, which could be wrong. I mean, there was a U.S. specific U.S. entity that they had created because the government said you couldn't trade on Binance.com, U.S. government, and so they had to create a separate entity, Binance.us, that was a American entity, blah blah blah, to do all the trading for that. Um, but I don't think it was because of that. I thought it was just because, like, and this is somewhat common in the industry to some degree, is that you steal a bunch of funds, you create an account on Binance or something like this with a fake passport or something like this, and then you just do some trading. Or sometimes those exchanges are like they're perfectly aware of it and they just charge you a lot of fees, and look the other way.
Yeah. And they just say, "Oh, well, we did our KYC. He passed our checks, and they just did
Right.
bare minimum to do it." Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder because everyone's shitting on Binance because of the flash crash from October 10th, and that they
Yep.
orchestrated it, made money, and
Yep.
and then who did he help? If that's true, did Binance help others make money? And so apparently he's in bed with the Trump family and whatever. Makes you
Yeah. Yeah.
wonder
Yeah.
if CZ helped the Trump family make a bunch of money in that crash somehow.
Oh,
Um,
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I have to think that it's totally possible, maybe even likely, that the whole pardon thing is really just a way for Trump to get, his token to get listed or something like this, or get additional support. So there's more liquidity of, his meme coin or his World Liberty Financial or these kind of tokens or whatever.
yeah,
It's politically motivated. I
yeah.
can't. I'd be hard to believe there was anything otherwise. But the Trump
Hey, can you guys
administration
hear me?
is,
We can
yeah,
hear
I can
you.
hear you.
Yeah.
The Trump administration's been, like, pardoning people like crazy. And another one that was really kind of crazy was that one of the Jan Sixers that got pardoned was attempting to assassinate Hakeem Jeffries, which is an important Democratic figure.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of crazy. That was crazy. He was planning on assassinating him, and I was just like, wow. So you let somebody out of jail who was a violent criminal just because you like that they supported you, whatever,
Yeah.
and then they would go ahead and do more crimes, which could have ended up being assassination of one of the most important Democratic, seats, currently.
Yeah. Well, like it, yeah, I don't think it really matters which side of the politics you're on. It's all crooked. They're all in it. They're
Yeah.
all doing something. They're all getting kickbacks. They're all finding ways to make money off it. Um, yeah, and yeah, I don't think Trump's family is any different. Um, I just hope they do it in crypto so that it benefits us too.
I think the difference is the scale, because like Trump has like earned like $1 billion per month since his inauguration, or like $500 million per month since his inauguration, and now he's like trying to get paid, like his own government is going to pay him like $230 million from the DOJ supposedly, although that doesn't even have to be done publicly. So a deal could be struck purely in private, back rooms, and you wouldn't even know a deal has been struck. But the idea that a sitting president would profit hundreds of millions of dollars from the DOJ, specifically, like, it's taxpayers, like it's your taxpayer money that is paying Trump out for that, which is, to me, absurd to do.
Paying them out for what? What's the excuse?
The accused is that there was two investigations into him. One was One was the Mar-a-Lago. He had secret or whatever covert documents, whatever the term is for that.
Yeah.
It was found in Mar-a-Lago. And there was another one too, and I forget the other. I think it was like 115 each was like what they were saying. I forget the second one was off the top of my head. So he was claiming that all that stuff was like politically motivated. There was no, there was no evidence for those things, even though the FBI found those things in his fucking in a bathroom in Mar-a-Lago. And so he kind of claims it's like politically motivated, and therefore he was targeted by for political motivations. You know, meanwhile, like Comey and Tisha James are getting investigated with, and nobody's willing to even prosecute them because there's literally so little evidence to support. In Letitia James' case, the difference, the whole claim is that she's got like a slightly better interest rate on a house that she bought. The difference is $55 per month. that's the difference in that particular. That's the accusation, is that she saved $55 per month by getting a slightly better interest rate on her mortgage, whatever it was, which is such a asinine thing. But yeah.
But you're saying the charges against Trump were made up, and so he's asking for compensation. That's what he's justifying that money from the DOJ. He wants to get he's like countersuing basically, and
basically he's countersuing, but there was significant amount of evidence to support the claims, and he was investigated to some degree, and I forget the outcomes off the top of my head, but like the fact is that like those files were found in Mar-a-Lago in a friggin' bathroom and had top secret information, which is, and to be fair, like to be completely fair, but like Joe Biden did the same thing like 10 years ago or whatever, for lesser confidentiality, like lower degree, but still the same, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, what I like about these spaces is we don't talk about politics. So let's maybe nip it in the bud there. And Patriot, you're here. I love it when you do our intros. You do a much better job than me. So do you wanna kick it off?
Sure, man. But hey, dude, welcome back. Everyone's been missing you, Kenton. And by the way, I publicly called for the Australian government to arrest you and deport you back to their island. Did they do that?
They did not.
That's great. So, government is useless. They're tyrannical when you don't want them to be. And when you ask them to be tyrannical, they don't comply. So absolutely useless, bro. But you've been missed. I'm really glad to have you back, bro. So
thanks.
Don't ever go away again. Okay.
Oh, you've done a good job, man. I've been listening to the recordings. It's been great. Glad to be back.
It's been fun, man. Yeah, but you're just like that. You're the perfect sidekick. You've got an element of economics that a layer deep than myself. So really glad to have you back. And yeah, Chad's always awesome, of course. Okay, we'll make the intro real quick. Everyone knows the deal. Guys, for those who don't know, THORChain is a decentralized exchange. It allows you to swap Bitcoin with thousands of other cryptocurrencies. It's all layer one. These are native tokens. We don't do bridges. Wrap tokens are involved in this process. And it's all from your self-custodial wallet. There's no KYC on THORChain. That means kill your customer. We do not do that. And it's permissionless. THORChain token is called Rune, R-U-N-E, and you don't need to buy or hold Rune to place a swap on THORChain. However, the fees are deducted from your swap and they're used to buy Rune, and this Rune is the yield that goes to liquidity pools and nodes. There are no block rewards on THORChain. 100% of this yield is real. There's another token, you guys. It's called TCY. This token is kind of like a preferred stock where 10% of the protocol's revenue goes to these token holders. If you deposited crypto into savers or took out a loan on THORChain, make sure to claim your TCY tokens. There's no rush to do this. If you need help, please DM me. I will help you. So you can start collecting this yield, and anyone can buy the TCY token as well. To swap, and I'm sure Kenton's going to give us an update on the interface, but to swap, go to swap.thorchain.org. One more time, swap.thorchain.org. New features and functionality are going to be rolled out continuously, guys. If you have any bugs whatsoever, there's an email address that's displayed on the site. Please contact it as well. Rujira, our app layer, is building decentralized Binance on THORChain smart contract layer. It's being rolled out as we speak. And a quick update on Rujira, guys. We were going to do a Rujira in space today, but actually talking with Erudite and JP Nami, We're actually going to be doing live streams. Those are going to start next week. It's probably going to be after this space. Might be before. I don't know. We got to work out the details. But we're actually going to be doing live stream where we're going to be highlighting these primitives that are going to be built on Ruggira, and then we're going to use clips and make content and then push that out and tell the world what we're building over here at Ruggira and THORChain. So it's going to be great. And if anyone holds any rune on a centralized exchange, particularly Binance, that was the topic you guys were talking about so often, please withdraw into self-custody because these tokens are being used to short sell rune and drive down the price. We need to liberate our rune and bond it. Consider bonding it on runebond.com. All you have to do is find a node, request a whitelist, and you can bond your rune. So go ahead and do that. Guys, let's repost the space. Let's get some more people in here. And yeah, I'll go ahead and kick it to you, Kenton.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm glad to be back, guys. Yeah, the update on the swap interface. So it's just slowly but surely. There hasn't, actually haven't looked at it in the last couple of days, but I don't think anything new has been added in the last couple of weeks. The guys are still working on DEX segregation, and they've been working on the UI for limit swaps, and then also adding some more wallets. So yeah, it's in the works. It's happening. It's happening slower than I like as well, guys. I want things to move faster. I keep pushing them, but work is being done. On the marketing side, go ahead.
Good news on that, by the way, is that Memolist is going to be as part of 3.12 that's coming out, and I'm sure you guys are going to be integrating Memolist into the UI.
Yeah, it's after the limit swap UI is done. That's the next step to work on Memolist. Yeah. Yeah, and then marketing, again, just it's always, kind of actually typical THORChain. It's always going slower than we want, but it is going. We just settled on a SEO provider. So like an SEO, when I say SEO, that includes AI optimization, like LLM models. So it's called, they call it AEO or GEO. Forgive me, I forget what those stand for, but that's basically the work to be done for SEO is the same for AI, for all the other, for everything. So whenever I say work is being done on SEO, that's interpret that as all encompassing to the LLM models and everything. And we feel like that's our starting point, our base, to get that going, so that when people are like looking for our solution, what THORChain solves, they can find it naturally, right, through an LLM or a Google search, and they can come to our website, right, and they can come and find us, and then that content is evergreen and it builds on itself. So the sooner we start doing it, the better. And then also, if people actually start looking up THORChain directly, we're popping up more in the searches, and they're seeing the content we want them to see. And so part of this process is getting a blog going on the website, writing specific articles to kind of highlight the features on THORChain and stuff like that. Paying for press releases, to get distributed online. And play the game, basically, just paying to play, getting content out there, and that dovetails into public relations, PR, so that when we go to magazines or newspapers, websites, journalists that basically can't be, like, they don't, like, you can't pay them to get into their publication. You have to come to them with the story, maybe they'll cover you. When they go to search, look up THORChain, there'll be lots of content for them there to see that we've created, and they'll be able to reference and fall back on. So SEO builds into PR, into public relations, try and get, basically to try to get people to voluntarily talk about THORChain. That includes like podcasts, interviews. Chad has offered, volunteered to do it, start doing it again. Everyone loves you, Chad. You're a great speaker. So hopefully we can get you, so hopefully we can get you some more spots, and to help get the reach, get the message out there. And so now and Reggie's our CMO. He's pretty caught up now at THORChain. I think he gets it. He understands what's going on, what we need to do. And so our next step is going to be getting a graphic design company to redo the website and do like a light rebrand. So not a Cracker Barrel or Jaguar rebrand, but just maybe refresh the colors a bit, redo the website, come up with some new images, stop using the Chris Hemsworth, stuff, but come up with like some images we can put, on like the Twitter banner and for people to post, if they want to create their own content that they can use. And just have some more consistency, right, in the imagery, and then back to the website, with our own swap interface, we want to, the goal of the website is get people to trade, right, to get people on to swap. And then the secondary goal is to highlight Rune and TCY as an investment, and then talk to developers, right, that want to integrate THORChain or work on it, right? Join the app layer, write smart contracts, or work on the base layer, what have you. So to advertise the devs, basically communicate to them. So that'll be that redo the website. Hopefully we'll get it all done by the end of the year. And then, come the new year, hopefully that's when I expect all the features to be done on the swap interface. And then, that's when we can do a real more concerted push of like, spending more money to like actively get out there to get users like and yeah. Oh, and then in parallel to that, we'll be trying to get onto these analytics platforms. I'm pushing Reggie to get that done too. Oh, things are moving. It's just right now we're kind of in that you don't see what's happening phase, but things are happening under the surface, and hopefully we'll start seeing the results of that here over the next few weeks.
One thing, by the way, we haven't actually talked about this before, but just kind of throwing it out there, is that like sometimes when you have a new kind of thing happening on your protocol, whatever, like limit swaps, for example, you can work with writers, journalists, whatever, influencers, whatever, to kind of like orchestrate a press release around this new feature to get people kind of talking that this new feature launched on THORChain, blah 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 blah. Can't really do it after the fact. I think like journalists don't really like doing things after the fact. It's just not as exciting or clickable, right, in a sense, because it's already happened. Rather, it is happening or has happened just now. But it's a way that I've always been kind of against that in general, just because it just requires more like kind of orchestration and timing and getting more people involved in like the release of something, which just makes it more complicated and slows it down and blah 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 and all these things. But now that we have like an actual like marketing team and whatnot, it might make sense. Something I'll talk to you and like Reggie about maybe sometime in the near future.
100%, definitely. And like we can even take it a step further where like if we give a certain journalist or an outlet priority, give them the scoop, that they can be the ones to report first.
Like exclusive rights or something, whatever the hell the term is.
Yeah, exactly. And that might help us get into one with bigger reach, right? So we can play that game a bit. And so that is what Reggie is going to work on with the SEO people. That's part of the SEO. And with that though, we'll need like someone like Familiar Cow or Baloney Bones, or some of the guys that write the content, to help actually create the piece, right? Because that's the other thing is these journalists, they're lazy, right? They're not writing their own articles, you guys, right? They're getting half of it's written for them already, right? And then they just go and reword it in their own language, in their own tone of voice or whatever, right?
Yeah, written by another person or written by ChatGPT.
yeah, exactly. So we still have to go to them with. We can't just say, "Hey, let's up to comment," report about it. We have to hand them the article basically on a silver platter. Here, this is to go. You can talk about it. Here's all the highlights. Tweak it as you see fit. It's just that's the game, you guys. That's how it goes. Um,
Yep.
so yes, long answer to your question. Yes, we want to do that for sure.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we got some big features coming out over the next 3 to 6 months. So
Do you want to recap on those? Just remind everybody what they are.
yeah, sure. So the big ones that I have in my mind, the ones I'm most focused on, is obviously limit swaps. That's going to be flipped back on once 3.12 comes out. Now that we've solved the API quotes bug. That's the first one. We'll probably run with memoless next. I think that was just tested on StageNet this week, and it seemed like everything looked really good. So I'm hoping that'll be really positive and smooth kind of roll out. And then after that would be the rapid swaps, which is basically doing a streaming swap in a single block rather than over 100 blocks. So I just saw earlier today there was a swap for I think it was like $2 million, and it took about an hour, a little less than an hour to do the trade. And theoretically, a Luma swap should be able to do that full 2 million in a single block, as long as you have, enough arbs and that kind of thing going on, which is pretty good. And then the next thing after that is changing our security model to be chain specific. So that means that individual validators, like Kenton's, runs nodes, for example, and so Kenton could opt in or opt out of supporting any particular chain, Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana or Zcash or Monero, whatever. Like, you can just opt in or opt out, and of course you only get the fees for the chains that you are securing or validating for. This will just allow us to be able to move faster and roll up more chains more quickly, which is what we're kind of aiming to do. It also allows us to scale more. So if we wanted to have 100 blockchains on THORChain, theoretically, to require 110 or 115, whatever number of validators there are right now, to all run 100 daemons, it's at the very tall order. And there may not be enough kind of meat on the bone to do that. For some of these chains, we might have a little bit of volume, and some of these chains we have a lot of volume, and we'll just kind of allow the validators to figure out which chains they want to validate for, what's worth the return and what's not, and that'll help kind of scale things more independently and in a more capitalistic perspective. And then the last thing that I'm planning on immediately is the intent design. So which basically means that you can trade any asset on any blockchain that THORChain is connected to, and we don't have to have a pool for every asset. You can trade any random meme token or whatever that you want on THORChain. Maybe even NFTs theoretically. I think that would even be possible in that scenario, but I'd think about that more. But basically, any asset you wanted, you could probably just buy or sell, or more accurately sell than buy. But in any case, no, both. Sorry, both. Those features are the ones that I'm most focused on for the next few months, getting those rolled out as quickly as possible, and just be more competitive in the space.
So I'm curious, why limit swaps before rapid swaps? Why not start with rapid swaps? In my mind, that seems like it'd be easier to roll out first and would have the most immediate impact.
Yeah.
Is there any reason or no?
Yeah, there is a reason. I mean, it's a reasonable guess for you to make, because you're right in some sense that rapid swaps is an easier feature to build, and less likely to have bugs or issues with it than limit swaps. But in order for rapid swaps to work, you need proactive liquidity on the chain to intra block and within a block provide liquidity and counter the trades that's happening within that rapid swap. So you kind of need limit swaps to be there first in order for rapid swaps to even really work.
Got it. Okay, got it. So limit orders. There's a bug in the code. That's why they were. Would they turn So have they actually been on, or we have them turned off?
Yeah, we had we had it turned on for a brief minute, and then the API request to get quotes like became a lot slower, and to the point where it was just prohibitive or causing problems with our partners. So we flipped it back off temporarily until we can get a new bug fix to the API endpoint.
But that API endpoint, that's just for integrations. Like, like if somebody
Yes.
has, if in a market maker or bot, they can still place limit orders like manually on THORChain right now. That's still possible, available.
No, they cannot right now because whenever you enable the advanced swap queue, you are also changing the behavior of the API quotes endpoint, and they're not separate from each other. So you can either have one or either have them both or have none of them. So for that reason, we had to flip it off temporarily until we could make that patch.
Okay, so no one's been placing any limit orders. It's totally the whole feature's
No,
been
no.
turned off. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, the whole feature's been turned off, and like I said, like I don't think the feature is going to be used very much outside of our bots initially. I think our bots are where it has the most value, at least on day one. Getting it used by other different types of users is going to be more of like a longer kind of longer process in a matter of speaking. But our bots will be quick to adopt because it allows them to be more competitive with each other.
Yeah.
And so they kind of have to some degree. But like limit swaps was like to me, limit swaps is like one of the most, for me as an engineer, is one of the most like nerve-wracking features that I've built for THORChain in years. And the reason why is because limit swaps required me to rebuild the entire like swap logic in Q. Something that's very foundational and fundamental to the protocol. And to kind of rewrite that stuff, like I don't want to say from scratch, but somewhat from scratch, is a kind of a nerve-wracking and difficult process, and it's easy to get it wrong. It's very easy to not account for this situation or this thing or that thing or whatever that is. So that was like it's a kind of a big code change that had a very strong opportunity to have an issue or a bug, versus something like a Thorify, for example, is almost like, maybe the analogy is like if you have a house and you wanted to build like an extra room in the house, or like the White House is building a ballroom, for example. So you're kind of ripping down one wall, then you're adding another kind of room off the side. That's different than like taking your already existing kitchen or living room or whatever, and then gutting the whole thing and then like rebuilding from scratch again. Do you see what I mean?
You read my mind. I was going to use the analogy of you the limit swaps as renovating your house and tearing down a load-bearing wall, where
Yes.
you got to make sure you get it right. Whereas if it's a wall that isn't load-bearing, it's not a big deal. You can do it yourself,
Right,
type thing.
which is the whole reason why instead of changing the current swap queue that we the kind of I call the legacy one, the one we're currently on, instead of just changing that and updating that system, we created an entire separate code base for that functionality that we could flip before and after, back and forth if we needed to. Just because I knew it was such a big kind of changing a load bearing wall, and it's a lot of danger to be said, and easy to make mistakes. And so I wanted to design it in a way that if there was an issue, we could flip back to the old behavior without having the whole chain be halted or whatever, like, and stop trades and stop all these things. So it was designed in a way that we could flip back and forth from the legacy swap kind of logic to the new kind of more advanced swap logic, so that if there was an issue, we could just flip it back and everything's fine, everything carries on, it's not a big deal, and then we can move forward.
Which did happen. So that worked.
Which it did work, but then we also had a consensus failure because of some weird situation where a swap that was meant for the advanced swap queue somehow got into the legacy swap queue, and it had like a zero number that it shouldn't have a zero number. And then we try to divide by zero, which anybody knows much about mathematics, you can't really divide by zero. And we actually had a consensus failure that particular day. It was an easy fix to make, one line change, push out the new update and get everything back online fairly quickly. But even now, like we flipped it back on, we still had some more issues, flip it back off again, everything's operating just fine. But just having that ability to kind of like to switch code changes from old behavior to new behavior is actually quite important in a decentralized platform, because it's so hard to manage changes, because you have to get 100 node operators to update to whatever the changes or fixes. In a centralized system, like in a web 2.0 or web 1.0, whatever it is, um, you have to get, you can update software like within 10 seconds. You can even automate it, which oftentimes happens in the traditional web infrastructure. Everything's auto deployed, but it's such a more,
Yeah.
it's so much more at risk, and it's a heavier thing to handle. It's much more complicated than your traditional web stack. So you have to think differently about how you roll out, especially very kind of features that are very, thorny in a sense. And there's a lot of opportunity to make a mistake or not get things exactly right.
It's one thing for me, I find frustrating to try and explain decentralization to people. Like, I think it's just such a nebulous concept that people have a really hard time grasping
Yeah.
it. And it's like,
Yeah.
with THORChain, we've got 100 and some nodes. You've got, let's say, a dozen devs, and it's like over 100 people, and it's like you're trying to coordinate everyone. It's like, imagine trying to decide where to go for dinner with 100 people. I mean, it's hard enough to do it
Yeah.
with 5 or 6 people, let alone 100.
Yes.
And that's quite literally what needs to be done every time, especially if there's an issue or problem. You got to act quick. You got to coordinate 100 people to
Right.
react right away, right?
Right. And so if we decide we want to go to a different restaurant, you and me and 100 of our friends, we have to get all of the 100 friends to like acknowledge and agree, which some of them are sleeping because it's like midnight for them, and it's middle of the day for you and I, right? And so that just creates a lot of orchestration requirement that is difficult and heavy.
Yeah. And I mean, I experience it a little bit as well, trying to get the front end going in this marketing, trying to organize several people all at the same time, right?
Mhm.
And like you said, we're on different time zones. We have, different day jobs, all that kind of stuff. So, but so this is why so many projects default to centralization, because it's just easier, right, and faster.
Yeah, it's a
And
lot easier.
yeah,
It's a fuck ton easier.
yeah, and so that's why.
People
Yeah, go ahead.
people will even use like EOA wallets versus multi-sig wallets in quote unquote decentralized, like they're not really that decentralized, just because EOA is like so much faster and easier to use. EOA being just a single private key, like everybody in this chat probably already has. Whereas a multi-sig, if you want to do that, you have to like, oh, I have to get online, and okay, Kenton, you have to get online. We need a third person. Okay, let's go get Patriot, blah blah blah. We have to orchestrate the timing and when we're all going to do this. We have to meet the same time. We have to send things back and have communications and send things back and forth to just sign this thing, and then we can go ahead and transfer this thing or make a code change or whatever the thing is we're doing with this multi-sig. It's a huge pain in the ass. It's being decentralized is definitely a pain in the ass by design.
Yeah. Well, add to your point too, we had a recent outage on AWS East, whatever happened
Yep.
there. And because it's easy for everyone just to go use the cloud provider on AWS and whatnot, but that's a point of centralization and failure. And at one point, a lot of THORChain nodes were using AWS, and there was a big push to get off it and for each node operator to have their own bare metal for that exact reason. I mean, so like the THORChain community was what, 2 years ahead of this outage?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny because like it's we as people, as humans, we don't celebrate the things that don't happen, right? We will probably not even oftentimes notice when things don't happen. Like when you have a really good like street system where you've good lights, and you've got stop signs, and you've got there's no potholes, and everything's kind of well maintained, you see a lot less car accidents, right? And you don't think about that when you get to work or school or whatever it is you're going to, and you don't have a car accident. You're not thankful for not having a car accident. We just never think of that way. And this is kind of the same here. Is like we just had this massive US East outage on AWS, which tons of online, like ChatGPT was down, like tons of huge corporations that have billions of dollars of like money transferring through their systems, whatever. And a whole, like so many of them had just gone down, for however many hours it was. But for us, like we barely even noticed it, like because you
Well,
could have,
even
yeah, go
Coinbase
ahead.
was down, right?
Yeah, I think Coinbase was down as well. Like, and we didn't because we are decentralized, right? Any single point of failure, like AWS just had US East 1 go down, and there's more regions within the United States of America, and there's a bunch more regions in Europe and Asia and all these places. It's just like there's one region out of, I don't know, there's probably like 20 of them, I'm guessing, whatever how the number is, and that caused such significant problems for so many large, huge, and important centralized corporations, and here THORChain is barely even fucking noticed.
And maybe we should, we keep saying bare metal, but maybe not everybody knows what that means. What does it mean when an operator is on bare metal? And how is that different from AWS in the cloud?
So typically on AWS, when you want like a server, you want a Linux server because you want to run a web server, that does something. Most time you have what's called like a virtual machine. So there's physical servers in Amazon's infrastructure, and they kind of just like segment a single server to different people to run different services on the same server. But they like, okay, this server has 64 GPUs and a terabyte of RAM and this much disk or whatever like the resources are, and it just kind of carves out a little bit of that server for you and a little bit of this server for you, and everybody kind of gets a little bit of chunk of it, so to speak. And by doing so, it just makes it a lot like easier for them to scale up and scale down and all this kind of stuff. But bare metal is different, where you own the server itself rather than a virtual server on top of it. You own the actual kind of physical box, and you can do that in a hosted way where you can rent a physical server from a provider like what's it called, Heitzer, something like that, and I think it's in Germany or whatever country that is in Europe. Or you can do something where you actually just go to a store, so to speak, or some website or whatever. You order a server, and then you physically get a data center. Go to a physical data center somewhere, within the U.S. or Europe or whatever, and you physically set them up and wire it and set up your firewalls and IP addresses and NATs and all these kind of like complicated things. It's a lot more like technically complicated to run a bare metal box. It requires a deeper set of technical knowledge, but it is a much cheaper way to do it.
And so basically, it'd be like being vertically integrated. You own your own equipment. You own the
whole.
the server.
You own the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you own the whole thing.
And then when
depending.
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, whether you put it in a physical data center, whether you have it hosted on Hetzner or whatever, or you kind of have a box that you throw in your mom's basement, somewhere, whatever that is, you take more responsibility for that infrastructure.
And then the weak point then becomes basically your internet connection or power connection. And that's the point of being in an actual data center versus your mom's basement, is that like these data centers are ranked on their uptime, on their redundancy, their internet redundancy, their power redundancies. And the higher the tier the data center, the more secure that power and internet uptime is.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I think everybody on this call, whatever, has had moments where they're frustrated with their internet service provider, where the internet goes down, or maybe you have a power outage at your house or your mom's basement or whatever it is. Like that happens from time to time because it doesn't really need 100% uptime, because it's just like an individual person. But large scale corporations who want to run professional infrastructure, they want reliable and redundant power. They want sometimes you'll even get multiple ISPs, internet service providers, to a data center. Like if I had a data center, theoretically, I could pay one data center, one ISP money to give me a connection. And I could get a second one, a second person, second corporation to provide internet for me if I wanted to, just in case one of them goes down, I can fail over to the other one just to ensure a much larger, uptime and
And
security, by the way.
I don't know for sure, but I know like the nodes I run are like that. They're in data centers on bare metal that we own. I know there's other node operators that do it. And for anyone who's listening, if you already know all this stuff, I know it's a bit elementary, but I think it is worth highlighting because there is no requirement for a THORChain node operator to do any of this. It is purely voluntary.
Right.
And I think we've all kind of figured out that the majority node operators are doing this. And the reason is because they're forward looking, they see the big picture, they know the problems with using the cloud, what could happen there. And they're building for the long term. They're building their nodes and their setup and their system to survive a lot of different things and to last for years to come. It's not which I think is huge, right? When it's one thing when people are forced to do something, but when people do something voluntarily, it really shows you what their mindset is like, how they're approaching things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense to use bare metal, to be honest with you. Like, it means that you're less reliant on a corporate entity to provide services. Not zero, you're not at zero because somebody has to provide internet service. The ISP has to be there, but it's as little as you can reasonably get, right? But also, like I mentioned earlier, like running a bare metal box with all this like infrastructure is just significantly cheaper than it is to rent, virtualized machines on AWS or DigitalOcean or Azure or whatever the other providers are. It's just significantly cheaper to do so. So it just makes sense financially, so you just get a better yield out of your box.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, maybe this is a way into the security hard cap. I just saw Familiar Cow post something in the Discord like 10 minutes before this space where we've reached a security hard cap and 9Realms is recommending to increase it by 50%. And maybe you can go over, I assume you're aware, you understand what's going on. Maybe you can fill us in.
Yeah, so we have this hard cap. We recently changed it, like I want to say it was like 3 months ago or something like this, to be this kind of like not optimistic. It was what was it called? Effective security, right? Where it was like the bottom 2/3 bond, and then we changed it to be just like a 1-to-1, meaning that like for every $1 worth of rune, we have $1 worth of space for TVL, right? For secured assets, trade assets, pool depths, whatever, right? Limit swaps, even, whatever. And we made that change, and for a lot of reasons. One, it's a bear market. Rune's price has been hit more than larger assets like Bitcoin or Ethereum, for example. And there's a lot of those coins in THORChain's, TVL. And so I think combined with the kind of flash crash we just saw a couple of weeks ago, where Rune's price again was hit a little bit harder than Bitcoin and Ethereum, and also there was a like a $4 million deposit, secured asset deposit into THORChain's system, so to speak, that like got rejected, and it got refunded because it didn't have enough security to support that $4 million deposit. I think it was Bitcoin that was getting deposited. So we kind of saw that when we kind of advocated for the community to increase that security cap from a 1-to-1 to, for every $1.50, or for every $1 of Rune, we can have $1.50 of TVL.
So a few months ago, when the security cap was moved to 1-to-1, that was actually reverting back to the original state of THORChain when it first launched.
Yeah.
And
right.
So there's already precedence for that being fine and safe. But now we're kind of moving into uncharted territory. This will be the first time we've relaxed the security stance like this.
Right. And it's funny because like I don't want to, it's not funny, that's the wrong term to use, but we, like, part of the reason for THORFi specific design was to provide, advanced features, but also maintain the same kind of security stance, right? You couldn't have done the things that we wanted to do while, while having a different stance on security, which is why THORFi was designed the way it was designed, to kind of respect that kind of thing. But obviously we've, through our own kind of trial and experimentation, that didn't really work out so well. So in order to create the opportunity for more advanced kind of tooling on, specifically in the app layer, whether that be perpetuals, whether that be, Bitcoin backed stable coins, whether that be, hyper trading or whatnot, we need to give them, more space to be able to build out those applications, so forth and so on.
So maybe we should remind people what this. So I'll take a stab at explaining it. So the way THORChain is designed is to be more money bonded in Rune than there are tokens like Bitcoin and Ethereum being secured, so that it makes it economically. It doesn't make economic sense to steal the Bitcoin and Ethereum and everything on THORChain. And like you're saying with the THORFi design, that design was a way to stay within that economic secure model where where we could have this lending feature, but not have more Bitcoin secured than what is bonded by Rune, and to maintain the economic security. We realized that that design, that feature wasn't working, isn't right, so we got rid of it. Now we want to explore the traditional collateralized lending feature that like Aave uses and TradFi and everybody else. But and we already knew about that before, but the hang up with introducing this feature is that we could have like $10 billion of Bitcoin come and want to be borrowed against, but might only have 500 million Rune securing it in the nodes. And then that would in theory, create an economic incentive for the nodes to collude and steal that 10 billion in Bitcoin. And so this has been an ongoing debate and discussion in the community for the last several months, is like, should we go down that route? Can we do that safely? Maybe I'll stop there. See if you have anything wanted to add to that, Chad, or expand on.
I think part of the reason why, I'll just speak for myself in some way, but like, I've always advocated for that kind of original security model because I'm somewhat of like a decentralized like purist, right? And everybody else in the space was not a purist, right? Whether it be, something like BitGo, like a centralized company, or whether it be, Osmosis, or like some other decentralized, like, especially cross-chain system, like they weren't so much of a purist about it, and they are doing it the way that we're talking about doing it now. Like, we've always been really the only entity or the only project in crypto that had a more purist mentality, right, of security, mathematical kind of security, if you want to call it that, or economic security, we called it. And everybody else in the industry, and you can probably name almost anybody, and they didn't have that perspective, right? They had a perspective that we're now talking about kind of migrating into, to kind of match the rest of the industry, right? That's an accurate way of looking at it. So it makes sense to me at this point, because the purest viewpoint that I held, historically speaking, it's a good view to have on paper, but practically speaking, it's limiting, right? It's limiting what we can do, how far we can grow, and all that kind of stuff. And to me, while on paper there is some sort of economic incentive to steal, that's not really a problem for any other project in the entire industry, because we've never seen that manifest in that kind of way, at least for any project, and of course not THORChain. So it's something that, like, I'm coming around to, because I want to see us not just be I want Seas to be able to expand into providing, as many services, high quality services as possible, so we can get as much liquidity, as much volume, as much fees collected, as much, all these things as much as possible.
I'm coming around to it as well. Especially the current state THORChain is in. It's like we can't. There's no sense protecting a network that no one's using. We gotta make it usable, and we might have to be flexible on some things, and so the question mark is just what would stop nodes from colluding to steal, and I think the simple answer is just it's actually quite impractical. Even if they did
Yeah.
want to do it, it'd be actually probably pretty hard to pull off. And then the other one is the yield they're getting, right? They're getting paid, and that's what they would sacrifice. So, would you want to add to that, or is there anything else I missed?
Yeah, I think I think stealing from a single Asgard vault, I think is fairly impractical at this point, because there's enough known good actors like Nine Realms, for example, like Kenton, for example, and other kind of like highly aligned actors in our community, to ensure that nobody malicious can get access enough valid enough shares of our GG20 TSS private key to be able to steal from a single Asgard, because that's how the code is developed. It spreads them out evenly so that anybody remaining just couldn't get enough shares to be able to steal. So then it becomes a question, and that's like even a temporary thing, because like at some point in the future we have plans to move to DKLS instead of GG20, and part of that, which is I presume that we will be able to move to a single Asgard vault instead of just like 6 of them. So that's a temporary, even if there is an issue there, to me it's a temporary one. It'll be kind of eventually solved just by DKLS. But if you wanted to steal, especially if you get into the DKLS situation, and you wanted to steal funds, you would need 2/3 majority of the nodes, right? And that's how many nodes? That's like 75 nodes or something like this, 80 nodes, whatever the hell it is. Each of them doing approximately 1 million rune on average. That's $85 million worth of rune, which is obviously a ginormous number. And then to be able to get all of your nodes turned in, and the current 85 people that are currently in the network right now to get churned out, like the process it would take to do that, it would be very difficult, because it would take, first of all, that would take months, right? Like 7, 8 months, something like that, to get all those nodes to get churned in. And then when your nodes get churned out, get them turned back in. And in order to get them turned back in, you got to have a higher bond, so you get prioritized over everybody else, which requires more capital. Like the amount of effort it would take, and time and money is quite significant. So much so that you would have to have a very bullish mentality on the rune price itself to buy $85 million worth of rune and then sit on it for the next 6 to 12 months, however long it takes to actually do all that, and be willing to take the financial risk of just the price going in one direction or the other. Like to me, it just seems, while mathematically possible, of course, it just seems completely impractical.
So I agree with that. But what about existing node operators breaking bad, or new node operators not actually, not, they try and acquire third-party capital, other people's rune to bond to their nodes to get in the network. And so maybe they operate honestly for however long it takes until they get to 2/3, and then they do something malicious. Do you think those are threat vectors to worry about?
To be honest, not really, because to have a single operator that runs 2/3 of the nodes is just so unlikely to happen. Like, I mean, you'd have to, in order for that to happen, you'd have to get pretty much the top 20 or 30 operators in the world to get in a room together and kind of shake hands and whatnot. And that includes Nine Realms, and that includes like,
Me.
you and other kind of like obviously highly aligned people. And like even if you made an effort to do that, like I had a malicious mind and I went to you, Kenton. I said, hey Kenton, I want to steal all the Bitcoin and blah 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 on THORChain. Let's get together and do this. There's like a good chance that like Kenton's going to say no, and then Kenton's going to go to like the rest of the community or to whomever and be like, hey, Chad came to me today and he said he wanted to steal all the funds and he's running these nodes and like it's unlikely that you would be able to get the top 20-ish, whatever the hell the number of operators are that you would need to get to that 2/3. It's just, I don't know, it just seems really impractical.
So I've been thinking about this. I'm honestly been thinking about this a lot the last several months. And one thing I think about is like, okay, if we can trust the current node operators, they're honest, and their motivation is the yield. That's how they're gonna get paid and make money. That's what keeps them honest.
Yeah.
If that's the case, is there maybe a reason to keep the node cap at 120 and basically entrench these honest operators? And even if the yields are getting really high, that's keeping them fed, keeping bond providers are happy because they're getting high yields, and that helps prevent any potential stranger outsider coming into the network. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I haven't really thought deeply about it, but I would imagine that if you were to increase the cap from like 120 nodes to, let's just double it or whatever, we'll just say 250, right? If you wanted to get the 2/3 at that point, you'd have to get a couple hundred nodes, right? And the amount of room you'd have to acquire and buy off the market would be obviously astronomical. And by doing so and buying, whatever the number would be, 150, $200 million of rune off of the market, you can imagine the rune price is going to go up. And just by doing so, like when you spend the $150 million to get all that rune, you're not going to spend $150 million. You're going to spend a lot more because as you spend the first 10 or 20 or $30 million, the price has increased, right? So the quantity, the price of acquiring these tokens gets increasingly more and more expensive because you keep on pushing the price up because you're just buying so much fucking rune off of the market, right?
Mm.
I don't know. It's an interesting question. I don't know. I haven't thought that deeply about it, to be honest with you. But you can either keep it at 120 or increase it to double it, and I'm not sure which one would be strategically the best.
Okay, go. Patriot, I've been hogging this whole conversation. Do you want to jump in?
Well, no, dude, I'm so glad because it's great having you back. And I've been working in the background, accumulating questions and stuff like that. So no, don't worry about that, brother. I've thought about that a lot too, Kenton. I've worm gamed in my mind, and I'm convinced if we get over 200 nodes, I just feel super, super safe about that. The incentives of THORChain as it's built right now attracts people who want to go by the rules, because when you go against the rules, they are viciously punished, right? Now, that could change, I guess, if we were to change our security posture a little bit, particularly when it comes to secured assets, but I don't really think so, though, the more I think about it. But it is an interesting question. But I think if we can get to 200 nodes, I'm more in line with Chad's argument, like to get that many nodes, I think then it just becomes virtually impossible. It would take such an insane suicidal economic attack to pull off. It would just, and the amount of time it would take for the nodes to churn in and stay churned in, and the collaboration, it just seems so daunting to me. So I think it's okay. I kind of look forward actually to getting more nodes in the network, but it is an interesting question. But I did want to pivot slightly because I'm so sorry to the TC intern. I meant to say this in the beginning. If anyone has any questions in here, please go to THORChain, the pinned comment. We never have comments here. It's such a bummer. But if you go to the pinned comments on THORChain, I am monitoring that, and I will, if anyone has any current questions, I will ask them to chat. And of course, people want to come up and ask questions, that's fine. One thing I wanted to mention, you guys talked about, you guys had such a banger conversation. I loved how you guys talked about how this community thinks ahead, particularly when it comes to bare metal, and that's something that we're never going to get credit for, right? We had AWS Eastern Side go down, and there was a big freak out. THORChain continues as normally, right? And that, I
Yep.
think, is the big thing with THORChain that people don't appreciate, is that we think ahead and we prevent the problems that right, like when you prevent something bad from happening, you can't appreciate it because it doesn't exist. And you know, I have a great anecdote when it comes like this. You know, I was an anesthesiologist and I had a small patient, and I had one time where someone hooked someone up with endotracheal tubes, what they breathe out of, right, to the machine, but they didn't turn the oxygen on. And so the patient's literally asphyxiating right then at the tube. And I saw it within half a second, right? And I yelled at him, so what the fuck? You know, don't want to say that word. I said, what are you doing? And I've corrected it, right? But I fixed that from happening. But it's things like that where if you think ahead or you're really paying attention and you prevent bad things from happening, it's something it's not appreciated. And it's a really bummer.
Mhm.
But and that's why I think it's such an important mentality. Like, I love what you guys saying. It's like, it's so easy to be negative all the time, but there is something really powerful in being thankful, like giving grace, like whether you're religious or not. It's like, if we were all at a table right now, all of us are eating dinner, all the co-hosts, the speakers, everyone listener here, it is so great mentally to say, you know, I'm thankful. And I, like, if I was speaking, I'd say, I'm thankful Kenton's back. I'm thankful he had a safe flight from Australia back to his home. I'm thankful Chad's back. I'm thankful we have smart community members like Boone and Max Power and Crypto Maze. And I'm thankful, like, let's see, Douglas is here. He's from the Monero community. He's listening to Spot. Like, I'm thankful for, like, that is such a powerful thing, guys. So I always encourage people, try to think ahead, think of problems that we can fix, and be positive, because it works so much better. And to pivot back to THORChain, guys, I don't know if you saw, but THORChain crossed 1 million rune burned, which is so cool. That's like a node's
Yep.
worth of rune that is gone forever. So really,
Yep.
really awesome. So I don't want to distract too much, Kenton, from the conversation. If you guys want to keep going what you're going, but I do have questions. But I know we're talking about the security budget right now, and that is a big topic. So I'll kick it back to you, Kenton or Chad.
Go ahead, Chad, if
Yeah.
you want to
So
respond. Yeah.
I think for me, like I'm switching my position on the security stance and moving to more of this model. It's more conducive to scaling and growing the protocol and getting other things like. By the way, like lending, for example, would be a kind of a disaster with the security cap, because say you have like a lending protocol on the app layer, for example, right? And if you have a situation where you're about to get liquidated and you need to throw some USDC or Bitcoin or whatever it is into your loan position, so you don't get liquidated, but you can't do that because there's a security cap that stops you from being able to support your own like loan position, and then you get liquidated and you lose like half your money or whatever it is. Like, that sucks, right? And that's a very kind of unappetizing lending protocol if like you're not sure that if you wanted to support your loan position, you wouldn't be able to, right? And that's like obviously a pretty significant flaw. So in order to really make sure that like these kind of advanced DeFi kind of primitives are implemented in a way that are competitive to the rest of the market, and provides a lot of significant value, not to just to THORChain, but to the industry as a whole. You have to think about these things, and that's partially the reason why I came around to having a less purist mentality.
Right. And, I was talking to a node operator today. Some people in this room knew who it is. And it's funny. It's kind of, it's kind of ironic because based on the same reason you gave, Chad, like that security budget was designed to protect THORChain. Actually, when you have the app layer and now that we're scaling, it actually becomes a bit of an attack surface, right? That
Yep.
someone could do some shenanigans and really hurt people on the app layer. And so, yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you two gentlemen about changing our security. And I think it works. I think that our protection is how decentralized the network is. And that's particularly why Kent and I am so interested in going to 200 plus nodes.
What are the shenanigans? What do you mean? Like somebody could try and manipulate the room price down to reduce the cap to make
like,
the features on app layer start to break and cause problems?
Yeah,
well, you could cause problems, and like you couldn't arb the pools anymore, right? Not the THORChain base pools; those would work just fine. But the pools on the app layer, like you could theoretically stop an arb from arbing, and if an arb can't arb, then the price gets increasingly away from the market price, and now you can price manipulate much more easily. It's less so in the app layer because they have like this whole Oracle concept as a secondary tool in the tool belt for the app layer to pull price feeds from. But still, like there's a theoretical kind of thing. If you can't arb, or you can't close your positions, or you can't change your perps, blah blah blah, whatever it is, then that's problematic, and that's theoretically attackable in one form or another.
The person in interest, Kenton, the note operator said, is they're worried about CZ. That's
Worried about who?
I was like, CZ, Binance.
Oh,
There's an attack service. They'll, yeah, exactly.
right. Well, because the people figure CZ orchestrated the flash crash to try and break Hyperliquid, right? So who knows? Yeah, could be right. And it's just kind of go along with the relaxing the hard cap. Yeah, it is a free market, right? And if we're open and honest with what THORChain is, and people are still happy to use it, well, I mean, it's all voluntary, right? And if the market says they're comfortable with this security posture and they're happy to use it, then fine. We're not hiding anything, right? So whereas with some of these other protocols, they do stuff off chain. You really don't know what's happening, right? And people throw billions of dollars at that stuff. So I don't know why they should be so bothered with THORChain relaxing its security cap. And just like you said, Chad, so many other platforms and protocols do it as well. Well, basically all of them do it. THORChain is the exception, right?
We were the exception. Yeah. Even amongst some of our forks, like some of our forks, went against that security posture. Like Chainflip, for example, which is their design is their code's not a fork, but the design is a fork of THORChain, and they kind of dropped that security posture. Even Maya did that to a lesser degree, but still did it.
Yeah. And then sticking with the free market idea, and if the market is concerned about it, that'll be reflected in our TVL, right? People will just start withdrawing, right? They start getting worried about, oh, you know what, this is getting way out of whack. Then they can just withdraw and not participate anymore.
It's the same for validators too. Like as a validator, you obviously don't want to see the network get rugged, because then all your rune that you have, gets slashed, even though you're not the one that's stealing, right? Because the network doesn't know who signed the transaction to steal the funds. We just know that somebody did, or 2/3 majority did, but we don't know who. So everybody gets slashed accordingly. And so as a validator, like maybe your position is that I don't want to be validated anymore because of this perspective. I don't see that happening personally. Like we're already at the vote has been going on for an hour, maybe 2 hours, and we're about 20% approvals so far to change this to 150 1,500 bips on the security.
Yeah,
$1.50 ratio.
I'm assuming it'll pass. I'm assuming I'm one of the few.
I presume it will.
I think I was in the minority for being adamantly against it before, but I'm for it now. I'm curious if let's say there is super majority support to actually remove the hard cap completely. Do you think there's any reason to do it like now, sooner rather than later? Like instead of just inching our way forward, should we just get rid of it? Let's just be done. Just get rid of the cap now.
You could. My mentality was that it's probably better to kind of boil the frog in this sense, if that makes sense to you, rather than have a kind of a decisive moment. But I thought it would make more sense. It'd be easier to get to that point, and removing the cap entirely, if we get there in stages versus in a full leap.
So
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Because one of the things I was always kind of hoping is that, as we right the ship and we introduce these new features, which I'm convinced are gonna do well and get the room price going up again, that that's really what we need. We just need the room price going back up again, and it kind of solves all our problems, including the security. And so, maybe we don't have to remove the cap because we've got so much extra security. But does that then still create the problem, like you mentioned, with lending, where we could end up Rune gets hammered for whatever reason, and the security cap, collapses relative to TVL, and we're in that scenario like you mentioned where somebody can't deposit crypto to meet a margin call. So
Yeah,
even if we are well over security budget when the room price is high, maybe we still have to have this conversation to remove the hard
sure.
cap.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, it's generally this kind of hard cap or security cap conversation is a bear market conversation because it's generally not really an issue in bull market scenarios. But you're right. Even a bull market, you could have a flash crash that changes a lot of things, and it's safer in some ways to just remove the cap entirely, and it's safer in other ways to keep the cap. You know.
Yeah, we may not truly realize the upside potential in app layer if there is a cap, because that could just
Right.
prevent people from using it in the first place. Because they're like, well, we don't want
Correct.
to, touch any of those features because there's a security hard cap, and
Right.
so
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
want to put the app layer on in kind of shackles, so to speak. I want them to
Mhm.
have as much runway as they can have to build highly competitive and useful featureful kind of advanced DeFi protocols to help us attract more liquidity and volume and fees and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, me too. I still come back to my original thinking is like, well, it doesn't make sense protecting a network nobody's using, right? And
Yeah.
so, if we gotta, relax our posture a bit, I think it's necessary, because then it's just there's no point. Um, and this is what's necessary to get people to use it. Then, the market is speaking, right? They're telling us what they want. So,
Well, I think it might be just a totally normal evolution of THORChain, right? Our very first days during ChaosNet, right? We had a certain amount of validators, very, very decentralized, right? The code was new, very young. I mean, THORChain's a different animal now. And I think these gradual changes to our security posture, I think may be thought of as THORChain approaching adulthood, right? And that the security posture before was probably necessary, or it was definitely necessary. And now that the code is, being very it's been battle tested so much auditing, that this gradual transition ultimately was the destiny of THORChain. It just, when you are a baby, right, your immune system is all messed up and you're on guard, and as you get older, as we get better, this transition, it's like, I don't know if maybe metamorphosis, like a caterpillar turned to a butterfly, if that makes sense. But you see what I'm saying? Like, I think this just may be the path that we had to take, right?
totally,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think so.
Okay, I actually want to go on a bit of a tangent there. You reminded me of something, Patriot. I keep seeing in comments and people asking about doing a rebrand on THORChain, and Reggie's even talked about it and whatnot. And I don't feel like right now is the time. I think if we were to do a rebrand, like a new name, a new logo, and stuff like that, that I think the market would just perceive it as we're trying to hide from the past type thing. I think what makes more sense is to wait. If there is will to do a rebrand, that we wait a good 6 to 12 months type thing and get the app layer done. It's all working. The synth leverage is gone. We removed the synths from the pools. Maybe by then the hard cap is totally gone. And like you said, Patriot, like THORChain has evolved, and it is truly different than from when it started.
Mhm.
And then a rebrand would actually make sense, because the THORChain of a year from now is going to be completely different than THORChain 2021. And in that sense, we could justify a rebrand that, hey, we're trying to communicate that THORChain is a completely different animal, and we're not doing a rebrand just to put lipstick on a pig type thing. So that, in my opinion, if anybody who wants to do a rebrand, I think the best time to do it is once we have all these features actually done, right? And stop, when we say they exist, they work, you can come use them. Then it'll make sense to do a rebrand then, or at least have the conversation then.
If I may butt in real quick, this is a conversation we had in the new traders chat. This is a while ago, in the OmniChain price chat. And this is something that came from the Rugiran side, not necessarily the THORChain side. And I got it here on my desktop. Give me 1 second. This is this one person, I won't say who they are. They say, we have formed a DeFi union. And they go and they talk about the ethos, what we are. And they say THORChain equals freedom. Rugira is like the freedom DEX. And I'm not saying we should do this. This is something that we kind of collectively came to, but we floated a name, Freedom Protocol. I don't know if you guys like that name or not, but I just want to put that out there in the ethos and the ether. Freedom Protocol. I don't know. I think it sounds kind of good because, if there was ever a collection of individuals that exists in any blockchain, any ecosystem that ultimately works for the betterment of humanity, believes in freedom, believes in truly emancipating the unborn children that are going to come into this world, it is this ecosystem 100%. All the things we've been through, the mistakes, the victories, the pain, all of it, we're all about freedom. And there is something more here. There is something more because we talked about early how, we're worried about node operators being malicious. But I got to be honest with you guys, node operators had ample opportunities where THORChain was in a weakened state where they could have exercised something malicious upon this protocol, and they did not. There was moments where things were very scary, very touch and go, and that they could have churned out and sold their rune, but they did not because they recognize really THORChain has to succeed. We don't have a choice. We have a gun to our head, right? We have to succeed. Failure is not an option. So I think this rebrand thing, I totally agree with you, Kenton. This is not the time to do it because it would come off as cheap. But once we prove to the wider cryptosphere, how long that takes, that THORChain has entered a new era, we have metamorphosized into a butterfly, if you will, then maybe that is a conversation we can have. But we'll see. We'll see what the community thinks. But great conversation. I love this topic. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I actually have
go ahead, Chad.
I actually have a new brand name, and I actually thought of this brand 2 years ago for unrelating reasons, but like it works very well for THORChain. And the name that I came up with back then was called Prism. And the reason why it's Prism is because in a prism, you have a light that gets separated into different colors, right? Like red and blue and green, whatever. And you have like all these colors, which in a sense represents the different like blockchains or coins. Bitcoin's orange, for example, and XRP's blue, and something's else yellow or whatever. And then the rune token, or the new token is, I have it written down somewhere. I have to go find it, whatever, but would be more of the white color because white is the combination of all colors combined. And that's what kind of rune is in some ways. It kind of allows all coins to kind of come together and be one, quote unquote. I kind of like that name of that brand, but that's just my personal 2 cents.
That's a solid name. I like it, man. I mean, I think it's gonna be interesting. I think the community I think they'll let us know, right, what the most popular thing is. I mean, but I love this conversation. I love it because I think we're different, right, Chad? 2021, Kenton, right? Like, we are not the same thing. Our first days, we're not. We're something much more powerful, much more robust. It's just
I would say I wouldn't even say like necessarily 2021, like even like a year ago. We didn't have app layer, like app layer didn't quite exist, and our kind of just general kind of viewpoint of what the base layer is and what its role is and what its goals are has changed. On top of that, we've got like the swap kind of market that we have is going to fundamentally change with limit swaps and memless and whatnot, and then we're going to be just adding chains through these new like intense features and whatnot. So like there's so much, even from just like 9 months ago or 6 months, whatever the hell the number might be, we've changed so significantly, let alone 2021.
I love where you guys are going with the way you're thinking about it. If there's I want to add to this too. There is something I do want to start with rebrand right now, is starting to position THORChain as a layer 1 instead of a DEX, because I think really with app layer that it is THORChain's more like a layer 1 now. And if we get like I think when people think of a DEX, they just think of like Uniswap, or PancakeSwap. Like your DEX on an L1, like you're kind of like a secondary product, secondary thing. Whereas now with AppLayer, we can have people building DEXs on THORChain in a sense, or different types of not just DEXs, but like launching their own tokens, launching NFTs, whatever, right? And so we want to be able to communicate that to the world, especially the savvy crypto community, that hey, you're a developer, come develop on THORChain, come build your product here, right? And maybe we start getting more apps, right, being built on THORChain. So are you guys cool with that? Hopefully you agree. I think it's pretty
I think in
kind
order
of
to get to that,
commonsensical.
in order to get to that place, and it was my mind, is we got to see that the app layer is more productive than the base layer. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like we have more volume or fees or whatever passing through the apps, the totality of all the apps versus the totality of the base layer.
Okay.
That's my first knee-jerk reaction, at least.
Cool.
I love it, guys. This is great. Go ahead. You have something else, Kenton?
No, to say, do you? I noticed we have somebody requested. Should we let them up?
Sure.
I have a quick question.
I see your.
Oh, sorry.
No, say I see Boone. You requested. I'm going to preview.
Okay, perfect. In the meantime, while Boone's coming up, I do have not too many questions, Chad, but I've got some questions. I try and source them through. Actually, a lot of the questions were actually answered organically by you and Kenton, which is really funny. So real quick, you know what? No, this is kind of a big pickle. I want Boone to go first, and then we can go out and do this after Boone. I changed my mind. Boone, you want to check your mic?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, buddy, go ahead.
Sweet. Yeah, so economic security is something I've thought about for a long time. But real quick, before we dig into that, I just wanted to, something Chad said very early on that I just wanted to like touch on. He was talking about like marketing new features, and he mentioned limit swaps as an example. I think that's awesome, but we should, and actually this is maybe like a broader suggestion, but like we should do like beta and then like baked, because how many times have we like launched a feature and then there's a bug or whatever, and if we like hype it up and then it falls on its face, that ends up being like harmful and self-defeating. And so like we should, I think it'd be great is like whenever we launch a new feature, say this is the beta release, we work out all the bugs, and once we feel pretty confident it's solid, then we go like, okay, it's now baked, it's mainnet, whatever you want to call it, and that's when we market it. Because like so many times, people are in group chats or whatever, it's like, oh, I thought we were when a rapid swap, when of all this, and like there's always that inevitable like delay from when we say things are going to launch to when they actually launch. So if we're going to market, I just think we should account for that buffer.
Yeah, in the conversations that I've had with like marketing or journalists or whatever in the past, they don't like that because you launch something as a beta and then it becomes mainnet, and the whole mainnet is like a kind of like a non-event, which is kind of what like that was true for like MCCN was kind of like a beta. We had like alpha, which was single chain KSNet, and we had beta, which was MCCN. And then at some point we just kind of decided that it was just like it was mainnet, right? No longer like from beta to mainnet. But the other thing is that like we generally don't, when we launch features, they generally just they stick, right? There might be a bug or whatever, but it sticks around. Limit swaps was different because, as I mentioned before, it's a very, very complicated thing of like ripping out load-bearing walls, the analogy we were talking about before. And I would also argue that having validators pick their chains, that's also another very big change. That's kind of rewiring some load-bearing walls. But other than those two things, the rest of those features, whether it be memless or rapid swaps, while they could still have bugs and we need to turn it off, like I might be, eating my shoe in a sense, but those features are just a lot less complicated than limit swaps, and so they're significantly less likely to have a problem where when you flip them on, there's a problem and you have to flip it back off.
Yeah, fair. I mean, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. But yeah, now digging more into economic security more broadly, like I do not like that we're considering effectively switching over to optimistic security. And yeah, I also feel it's like been kind of like gaslit or trickle truth perhaps, because whenever we were first talking about the base layer or the app layer and introducing the app layer, one of the core promises, I'm pretty sure it's still in ADR 20, so it's like what was voted on by the nodes, was saying that the app layer will not impact the base layer. And this is, in my opinion, clearly the app layer impacting the base layer, because the app layer has liquidity needs. It is now going to impact the security, the security of the base layer. And we were told that wasn't going to happen. And so it just feels like, concerns were brushed off. And because from the very, very beginning, whenever we were talking about an app layer, I saw this I knew the economic security stance would have to change. And it was always brushed off and like, oh, we won't do that. And like, oh, well, let's lift the hard cap a little bit. Let's do a little bit more. And I'll pause for your thoughts there, but I do have a few more after this.
Yeah, I would say that like I don't remember the language of ADR 20 off the top of my head. I'm not sure what that was, but like what's most important, at least in my view, is that like that significant changes, like security stance, for example, goes through governance, right? And so nodes can vote in one direction or the other, and if they align with you and they don't want to see that kind of change because of ADR 20's language or whatever the reasoning might be, they can totally vote in that direction. And we're doing a vote right now, and maybe it won't pass, and maybe it will pass. Like, we'll find out, in 24 hours or 48 hours, or whatever, whether there's going to be enough support to do that. But to me, like I said, like the most important thing is that like that nodes vote and have a position of whatever that is, and to come to a consensus through that methodology. It's hard to like maintain any statement for like all of time, right? Because you don't know the conditions of the future, or what changes in the market or whatever, and it's hard to kind of have a stance that you're going to maintain for whatever period of time that you want to talk about. But what's important is that we get together as a community. We understand we understand the information, the environment, the conditions. We're well informed. We have a conversation like we're having now, either on Twitter or through Space or through Discord or whatever it is, make relays, whatever. And we have that kind of like having open, honest, and genuine conversation with the community. And then at the end of the day, it is governance. People will vote whatever direction they want.
Can I have a clarifying question here? So how I think about it, could it not just be where you have a hard cap when it comes to exogenous assets inside the pools themselves, but then the security cap cannot apply to secured assets specifically on the app layer side? Does that make sense in a code sense? Because I understand, like, because I don't, maybe this, if you remove the security cap, if you have exogenous assets that are in the pool ready to be grabbed, that's one thing. But I think from when I follow the first principles, the app layer just cannot have a security cap eventually, because we're going to run into problems. So can you sort of thread the needle that way, or does that not work?
That
You
doesn't work.
can. Theoretically, you could do that. Whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, that's another question. But you're saying that like if we have the security cap on the pools, but we don't have a security cap on the secured assets or trade assets, yeah, from a coding perspective, you could totally do that, right? But I think in effect, the result of that is just not having a security cap.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make sense from an economic security, because the pools are essentially an economic fiction that we impose. Like the honeypot, the incentive for a malicious actor is to take the exogenous assets from the Asgard vaults. And so it doesn't matter how we internally account. It's like, oh, these exogenous assets are in the pools, and these exogenous assets are secured assets. They're in the same Asgard vaults. like at the end of the day. And if you can get the keys to those vaults, you get the assets regardless of how we account for them.
Right. So my thing though is how you defend against that is you have increased the decentralization of the network, right? Like I hear what you're saying, Boone. I just don't see how we scale the app layer by having a security cap.
Well,
and so if you make the network literally if you cannot take it over, right? Then that's the ultimate defense. It's this transition you make when it comes to the decentralization of the network itself, that you simply cannot buy enough Rune, you simply cannot churn in enough nodes, you simply cannot, you know, coordinate with other node operators to steal the funds to begin with. So that's why I said earlier, that's why I want 200 plus nodes, because that's the attack vector that my mind thinks like, if we get to that point, then I think it's just extraordinarily unlikely. But like, so I understand your concern, but what is the solution, right? Because I think people say the argument that goes uncontested that the security cap itself is itself an attack vector, right, against the app layer. So how do we thread that needle?
Well, so I don't have the answer, but yeah, I mean the real answer is this is why I've always been pretty skeptical about the app layer from day one, because it opens this attack vector that wouldn't be there otherwise. And like the real answer is don't have the app layer. And I know that's probably a very, not popular opinion, but like that's to actually have security, that's the answer. And like, or keep the cap. And, so for example, like THORChain, I think once limit swaps and rapid swaps are in the code, like if THORChain is just the best cross-chain DEX period, that's great. I think essentially we're gambling on the app layer, and the protocol is taking on a lot of risk for an unproved thing that's not necessary. I don't think we need the app layer. And so to introduce more risk for unknown payoff just seems gambly and unnecessary to me.
Well, I would say that like if the app layer is non-successful, then it doesn't really matter because they're not really going to add a lot of secured assets, or there's not a lot of TVL to lock up for the app layer.
Well, the threat is that the app layer is successful and onboards a ton of secured assets and creates a giant honeypot. That's the threat.
Yeah, and so that's where I was heading next. Is like if it is successful, then we have this kind of good problem to have of like we've got a lot of success, we've got a lot of fees, we've got a lot of volume, like whatever. We're room prices doing well, blah blah blah, all these things, but then we have to think about the scenario and hopefully by then, I'm not that I'm promising anything, of course, but like we're moved on to DKLS hopefully, and I made some security kind of changes to the base layer to make things more secure in a different kind of way than how we've done it historically speaking. But to me, it's a good problem to have. Like I'd rather have that problem right now than where we are today.
Sure, really. I mean, if I may just like continue to red team this a little bit, like, I mean, you just stated an assumption there that I don't think is proven, where like, I forget the exact term, but it's basically like how productive are these secured assets going to be? Like, if you look at say Aave, the interest paid on WBTC is minuscule relative to the TVL of that WBTC. And so just because THORChain onboards a ton of assets doesn't mean we're going to be making a ton of money. And so
we make money relative to what Ruji or whatever the app that is making money, right? So
that's my point.
So if they're not making money off of this thing, and then they're neither of us, but I don't think Ruji wants to build an app that doesn't make any money because that's not really good for their holders.
Sure, but if they succeed or they're not just risking their own protocol, they're also risking THORChain.
Yeah, well, they're paying for the security. They're paying us money so that we provide security for them, which is the same thing that.
But I know I understand, but we're literally making our network. We're voting right now to make our network less secure because of them. Like that's what's happening right now. So.
Yeah, I think right now it's actually like to be supporting more of the TCY situation. I think that like $4 million was being deposited the day. I think it was there to I think to buy TCY token or
Yes,
something like this, something like this. So it's in this particular instance, in this particular moment, it's more to support the TCY token. But in the future, you're right. It could be just to support lending on Ruji's, app or whatever.
Right.
So I want, can I, if it's okay, Boone, I'd just like to rewind just a little bit. And yeah, guys, and by the way, this is what this is about, you guys. Like, we don't censor anyone. Anyone can come up here and state their opinion, and the merit of the argument itself will always carry the day. So I'm actually thankful Boone came up and stated his opinion. It needs to be said, and I'm glad he said it. But I'm curious, Boone, like my brain, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to think of the first principle. If the first principle is sound of a system, then the system works. That's to me, like anything that I've ever thought about, any investment, any system, as long as the fundamentals are strong, like we're talking about load bearing walls, or maybe you can talk the foundation is not built upon sand. If the protocol itself is making lots of money, and I know that's an assumption you would say, because we're saying that, well, maybe these secured assets don't make money. I can see that argument. I can't prove that. But the argument is, if the decentralized nature of the network is 200 plus nodes, it would take an unfathomable amount of rune, an unfathomable amount of time. Is that not a pretty good defense against your concern about the app layer undermining or causing the demise of THORChain? That's my, like, do you think, or do you not, do you say, because in my mind, I'm sorry to keep going, we need some sort of DeFi system in order to liberate the world. That's the ultimate goal here, right? Like, and I know that sounds romanticized or cliche, but I really believe that. Like, I really believe that. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
No, I mean, I'm on the same page. I'm just, we kind of spoke about this earlier in the space about looking ahead and, not, assuming the worst, right? And that's what I'm trying to do here is red team, play devil's advocate. Like it's easy to like, oh, if things go well, it could be amazing. But like, I mean, I think THORChain, we get no more second chances. Like if there's one more sizable fuck up, like no one will give us another shot. So I want us to be very careful with the moves we make, So I do want Ruggiera and the app layer to succeed, but I just don't want it to be at the cost of added risk to THORChain. And then to address, I do agree that yes, as long as the network is secure, then it's secure and none of the problems are real. But like, you keep bringing up the number of nodes. That's not the actual security parameter though, right? It's the number of node operators. And that, I mean, does anyone have like off the top of their head, it's like probably what, 30 or something like that? There's 30 unique node operators for THORChain?
I thought it was 50. But
I don't know. I'm guessing. I don't know.
I think last time I looked, which was quite a while ago, so I might be out of date, but like I think it was like around 40 or 50 unique addresses for node operators, and I think like half of them were large scale operators, people like Kenton.
Right. And so like if you wanted to, and I don't have the data to actually put correct numbers to this, but like if you really wanted to be like red team about this, is like, well, how many node operators do I need to hack and steal their private keys to get 2/3 of validator votes? And it's probably like 3 or 4. If you get 4 node operators colluding, you could take the network. And so like it's not 108 or whatever the number of validators is, it's 4. Like you need to get 4 sets of keys and then you can steal all the exogenous assets.
Yeah, and that has nothing to do with the security position, to be honest. Like you could do that right now. Like you could hack into, whatever the quantity of operators' computers and steal their TSS shares, blah blah blah.
Well, no, I know. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm trying to address what Dennis's point was, where it's not about the number of validators, it's about the number of unique node operators.
Yeah. I think we were talking about, at least I recall talking about, like how many operators would you need to get to a 2/3 majority of either an Asgard or the whole network.
Right, and then there's even a further concern where, if you really wanted to red team this, you don't even need 2/3. You only need 1/3 plus 1 to blackmail the protocol. Because if you can get 1/3 of the keys, then you can stop signing anything out of the vaults. And even if you can't steal the assets, you can stop anyone. You can brick them, and that's another threat.
But that's very really shitty threat, because you have 1/3 plus one of the nodes. So like, let's assume that's like 40, nodes. That's like 40-ish million dollars with a rune that you can't get back yourself, and you've already probably caused the rune price to go down by I don't know, 30% or something, just by having the threat there. So you've already lost millions of dollars by making the threat, and you will never get your 40 million back because you.
Okay, but what if CZ is actually scared of THORChain and 2 years from now and is like, oh, I only have to spend 100 million to brick THORChain? Done.
Yeah, I mean we've talked about that. I didn't use CZ back then. I remember talking about Vladimir Putin wanting to shut down THORChain, but that's always been a thing. That's never not been the scenario. But there's nothing we can really do about that, right? And to be fair, there's not a protocol in the world that can do anything about that.
Well, I think
Right.
we can't still, if Boone, if I may, so you're bringing up great points here. I totally concede your concern, as these are plausible concerns. This is why, we did the Raise the Bond campaign, but there was something more to it where you have people like Runtard. Like, we should be very proactive in bringing in new validators, new node operators themselves. I think this should definitely be a community initiative, right? Because if we can increase that number, because you're right to point out that the flaw, what I said, of it being actually the nodes themselves, not necessarily the number of nodes, then I think this is something that we can do. So I think these problems, because I think hopefully we tentatively agree that if the first principle that I mentioned, if we accomplish that, we're safe, that gives us a clear goalpost that we can aim for, right? So I think we need, let's really double down, and I'm interested in doing this. Let's make new node operators. Let's get more individuals into this community. Let's empower people like Runtard, and let's continue the decentralization of this network. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. And again, I'm not trying to shut down ideas, but just really, I do want economic. I do not think switching to optimistic security is to the protocol's benefit. And then I was disappointed to see Familiar Cow saying that one of our node operators' idea of cold vaults has been put aside or dismissed. I thought that was a legitimate way to scale, taking on to keep exogenous assets secured while maintaining good security. And I'm sad to see that that's been put aside, and I'm not quite sure the logic behind that, honestly. I don't know if anyone here has any.
You're talking about my design for cold vaults, or you're talking about some other?
The operator formerly known as AutoStake.
Oh, AutoStake. Yeah, that was. I mean, I don't remember every detail to that proposal, but as I remember, it was a hybrid, decentralized, and trusted entities model, so that maybe I'm a trusted entity because the community knows me well, and maybe JP's another one, maybe Kenton's another one, and it'd be trusted individuals who have shares that make it more difficult to steal, because these individuals be kind of annoyed with a cross as trustworthy, safe people that we don't mind giving our keys to. I wasn't a big fan of that for I think fairly obvious reasons. Personally, I had another proposal for a cold vault, a year or 2 ago, 2 years ago, I think it was. That was another way of doing cold storage, so that the pools themselves would just be kind of like the hot storage, so to speak, and the cold storage would be just sitting in random people's wallets through economic security. That they would put up Rune, whatever, as collateral, and then just store Bitcoin on their on their ledger or whatever. That's a feasible choice, as well. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem like. Well, maybe that'll change in the future. Maybe we can revisit this question. Question for you, Boone. What do you think about bond providers? Are you for having bond providers or not?
I mean, I like it because I am a bond provider, so I like having access to the yield without the capital or know-how to run a node myself. So from a selfish perspective, I like it. But I mean, that's just what I'm saying is it's been a slippery slope for a long time of less and less and less economic security. And, you know, as Kenton used to say, is like, it's like, you know, it's like that meme of the turkey. It's like the turkey is getting fatter and it's like, oh, I have great quality of life and I'm getting bigger and stronger and bigger and stronger and healthier until it gets killed on Thanksgiving, you know? And it's like,
Yeah. So my question to you is like, I presume you understand the economic risks, security risks that come with bond providers, which is
yeah,
like
well,
tax
yes,
on
but
it or
like, so
whatever.
that's what my is like, we're compounding risks. Is like, there's the bond provider risk, and then it's like the,
Right,
you know, the roulette.
but let me
Yeah,
ask you, like, why are you for bond providing, but you're not for, you know, other things? Like to me, those two things really are on the same street, the same road, you know, in a lot of ways. And so I'm curious to understand, like, how do you see those things as different?
I mean, I don't know if I'm like for bond providing per se, but like it's happened and it's been, you know, it is what it is. But I guess is like, what I would say is like, since it's risky, I'm I would prefer not to see us take on more risk. Like we're already taking on risk. Like let's just leave it at the level of risk here. And so that would be my answer to you is like, yes, we're already taking on risk, but that's not an argument to take on more risk, right? We should, yeah.
No, it's not what I'm saying. Is I'm more saying that like we have to look at. We've done a lot of things throughout the history of the project that either increases security. Like for example, we went to effective security. For example, we moved to that, which is an increasing security rather than going the opposite direction. And we've gone, you know, other ways. We're adding bond providers and talking about the security posture being a little bit different. Like we've gone in both directions at different times in the project's history, and obviously it's okay for people to have different opinions or ideas of which direction is right or wrong or whatever, and voice those ideas and concerns and discussions. And I was just trying to get an idea from you of like how you see those, like how do you are for one thing and another, like how does your mind kind of like map those two things? And I was just curious to understand you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've kind of said my piece, so I'll like sign off here. But yeah, I guess like at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, ooh, that's got a weird echo.
Yeah.
That I would not like to see the protocol take on what I would consider unnecessary risk to accommodate the app layer, and then the whole thing falls apart when I think the core protocol can stand on its own without the app layer. And that's just kind of like my 2 cents. But yeah, I've said my piece. So thanks for hearing me out, everybody.
Well, real quick, you know, Kenton hasn't spoken yet. I'm curious, Kenton, if you'd like to enter here and just get your take on this conversation thus far.
Boone, I agree with your first principles thinking. I like it, and I totally agree with your comment. Like, you know, do we even need app layer in the first place? Right? Is it worth it? And your thoughts have been my thoughts for the longest time, and I still have them. And for me, it just comes down to like a weighted probability thing. You know, what are the chances of each one of these scenarios happening? And you know, I think it's just kind of like life. Like, you know what? Yeah, there's a risk. Something bad could happen, but what are the chances of it? And what I think is more likely is that if app layer is more successful, room price goes up, there's more yield, that drives up the room price. It makes it more expensive to run a full node. Like, or, you know, you need that much more room, more dollars to run a full node. That I think going forward, we're going to see more and more node operators that are doxed. And I think that's the real safety, because yeah, somebody can steal, but can they get away with it? And you know, if you're a doxed node operator and you steal, you can't get away with it. So, you know, in my mind, as long as there's at least 1/3 of the node operators are doxed, we're fine. There's no issues. And so if, you know, I look at Bitcoin and Ethereum and these other, you know, protocols, like, you know, Bitcoin, the mining pools, they're huge, you know, corporate entities. Everyone's doxed, right? Like the Ethereum node operators, they're all doxed, right? They're all entities. So, you know, I think as THORChain grows and matures, the node operators are going to become doxed as well. And you're going to have, like me, you're going to have larger operators that are, you know, public, and there's no way in hell I could get away with stealing anything. Functionally, I might be able to do it, but in meat space, there's no way I could get away with it, right? So I think as THORChain succeeds, it's going to attract more and more doxed node operators, and that is what's going to be that barrier to acting wrongly. So I view that as the most likely outcome. So that's why I'm okay with going down that path.
If I may, and I just want to give you kudos, Boone, because a lot of people, and you're wrong to do this. You got some people like they don't like when Boone like talks ill about that. Like, I've never met Boone, but I like the guy because I know what he's doing. Boone freaking cares. He cares about this protocol. He cares about the mission, and it takes balls to come up here and speak your mind, particularly when the community seems overwhelmingly aligned in one direction to give the counter view. So I want to give you a shout out, Boone. I really appreciate you doing that because I know where you're coming from and I know it's a good place. So thank you very much, guy. But go ahead, Boone. I know you were going to reply.
No. Oh, no. I would, first of all, thank you, Dennis. And then Kenton, that is honestly the best argument for security that makes a lot of sense.
I think so. And Chad, it's almost been 2 hours and you've been so generous with your time. I don't want to move, but I do have some questions. I want to make sure they get asked. How much time do you have, Chad? Because if you need to go, I will push them if we need to.
No, I'm okay for a little. I can do another like 20, 30 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kenton and Boone, for allowing me to push this forward a little bit. I did have one question here, and Kenton, Boone, you guys can obviously chip in as well. This is an interesting question. So the person who asked this, Artem, they asked, like right now, 100% of the rewards are going to nodes for security, right? And the overall question is, I'm going to paraphrase, like, would it be better to permanently affix it to like where maybe it's like a 2/3 or 3/4 split to nodes and have something go to the liquidity providers, whether it's mostly POL or not, so that the depth of the pool can organically grow. And then we actually capture some of the TVL instead of all the rewards going to nodes. So I'll kick that one to you, Chad, I guess first, and we go from there.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I've had conversations with JP in the past, although not recently. We should probably open up this can of worms again at some point. And it's the incentive pendulum was designed to work when all the exogenous assets were in the pool, right? And it worked very well in that scenario. But obviously that's not so much the case anymore with secured assets and trade assets. So it does make sense to shift the incentive pendulum to some other model. I had an idea of how to do that a while back, and I'm now blanking on what the hell that idea even was. I wish I wrote it down. I'm sure it'll come back to me if I think about it for a long enough period of time. But it does need to be addressed. It does need to be shifted in the design does need to change, to be honest.
Okay, perfect.
I'm kind of trying to low key push this for a while, but so it was a month ago, so it's probably a lot of date, but the quote unquote protocol on liquidity from THORFi, I think, was like 75% of the pools, and then the treasury is probably, I would guess, another 10% at least. So like 85% of the pools is already protocol on liquidity, and so it's like, all right, and since we own this liquidity, we no longer need to rent it, which is how I view paying yield to LPs, is we're renting liquidity, right? They deposit liquidity and we pay them for doing so. And since there's hardly any LPs anymore, we don't need to pay to rent liquidity anymore. And so we should just directly deposit it into the pools at like some part of our liquidity fees directly into the pools as additional POL. We can use that to seed new pools as we onboard new chains and whatnot. And then it'll also function as a burn, because half of what goes into the pools is rune that'll never be sold. Just like off the top of my head, like if you have 100% of our liquidity fees, 5% go to the devs, 5% go to marketing, 10% goes to TCY, 20% goes to POL, and then I think that if we do 60% goes to node operators. I think that's a pretty good breakdown and would grow the pools organically out of future earnings. So that's kind of my thoughts there.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not
Okay.
sure. That's probably true that we don't have a lot of LPs other than the protocol itself or the treasury. I think that might shift though. I'm not quite sure, but I think that might shift if the room price were to go to like $4 or $5, just say hypothetically. Then I think a lot of the LP positions now that are quite small and don't provide a lot of liquidity would be actually quite large, right? And that's partially because of the synth units and blah blah blah. So I think you're right in what you're saying now, but I'm not sure that would be true in a more of a bullish market.
Kenton, do you have anything you want to add, or should I go to the next question?
No, go to the next question.
Okay, thank you guys for that. For you, Chad, this person wants to ask, if I'm not mistaken, Chad B was working on a protocol that would accumulate the collected commissions from pools separately so liquidity providers could see their specific earnings and collect them. Is there anything, is this still being worked on? He'd like to just know the latest information on that.
Yeah, that was something that JP and I talked about a while back, so that people know that the idea behind that was that when you're collecting yield as an LP specifically, that your yield would be put into like basically like I think to like USDC or something like this, and then you just see this kind of like bank account, so to speak, growing in USDC over time, and that it's beneficial in the sense that it just kind of like it allows you to see the yield that's being produced, and it's just kind of a better like almost like a better like UX experience. You know what I mean? We talked about for a while. I think we're both still open to this idea. I think we're more focused on bigger features that would provide a lot more value. Like I've told JP that like it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend much time implementing features for LPing. Just because you can't even add liquidity for the most important pools anyway. So producing features that make it more attractive to be an LP just doesn't make sense in the current market today. And it makes more sense to spend our engineering time on, limit swaps or something that has much more significant like value proposition to the protocol. But like I'm open to that. The negative about this though, this idea that makes me kind of like question it is that it means that the yield that's being produced in the network for the LPs would effectively exit the pools and people would collect it and put it in their pockets or something like this. It's better for the protocol for the yield that you produce in your L position stay in the pools to keep them the pools deeper and have it just grow over time like that. But it is something we have talked about, but I think it's been deprioritized just to focus on other features that are more valuable.
Thank you for answering that, Chad. And again, these are questions from the community, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. I have two more questions. The last question is kind of a fun question. The next question is it easy for front ends to implement limit swaps?
How do I answer this question? It is harder to do it than your typical swapping interface that we currently have. I'll say that. The reason why I say that is because there's a lot more to the UI, because I think if you're going to build a limit swap UI, it's not going to be like a simple kind of swapping interface like you see with like THORSwap or THORChain.org, whatever, where you just kind of put in your source, put in your target, blah blah blah, and connect your wallet or whatever. You're probably going to have I would presume to be a more professional UI, meaning you're going to have like tradingview.com charting. You're going to have orders that are being listed, like your open orders that you have listed, a history of your orders kind of listed of like all the different trades you have executed in the last 3 months or whatever the hell it's going to be. And so I think the UIs are going to be more complicated and more featureful, but to actually do a trade like a limit swap trade versus like a market swap trade, it's identically the same in terms of complexity, because the memos are literally the same memo with a 1 or 2 character change, right? So it's not that hard to implement from a technical perspective, like to actually do a limit swap. But I think the UIs are naturally going to be much more complicated and much more featureful, and targeting a more kind of like day trader or professional trader to kind of engage with those things. That makes sense. Did I answer that question well enough?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the person who asked that question is not here, but I think he ends it pretty
Yeah.
well, if you ask me.
Okay.
Okay. One last question. And you know what? Anyone can answer this, and let's be positive here. Let's assume, we nail it, right? I think I want to do that. Chad, where does Chad see THORChain 5 years from now? Could THORChain become the decentralized marketplace for any tokenized asset on any blockchain?
Yes, it could. I think that's kind of the goal. That's been a new shift, at least in my perspective, and I think in JP's perspective, just in the last few weeks. That we've always had a mentality, JP and I, that THORChain would be more of the short tail, meaning like just fewer chains, fewer assets, just focus on the ones that are hyper liquid, like Bitcoin and Ethereum and stables and things like this. And then we were going to rely on like DEX aggregation for the long tail, right? To use like smaller DEXs. So like the analogy I've always liked to use is that like THORChain is like the airplane that you fly from country to country, but then you get in an Uber to get from the airport to your Airbnb, right? That you're going to go stay in or something like this. That's the analogy that I've had in my mind for many years now. And I think that's shifted for me. And the reason why is because I've always been against adding a lot of chains, just because of you inherently have diminishing returns. Like if you have 10 chains versus 30 chains, the volume you're going to get is not going to be that different. It's going to be maybe a 5% difference in volume, right? Or 10% if you're lucky or something like this. It's not going to be that significant because most of the people trading are trading for Bitcoin, Ethereum, stables, and more or less that's kind of it. It's a little Solana, a little Zcash, Zcash recently, but like generally speaking, it's pretty stable in that sense. And as we add more chains, we are creating a lot more complexity in terms of what it takes to run a validator, for example. And every time we add a new chain, there's always a chance that chain's going to have problems. That chain's going to break. A chain's going to have sensitivity. A chain's going to have weirdness, collapses, whatever. Or just like you have to maintain that chain. There's a new version that came out. You got to come up with a new PR that changes the version from version 3.5 to 3.6, and you have to tell the community to update to blah blah blah. It's a bunch of like the maintenance work and is the same, but the value given to you from a volume perspective decreases with each individual chain you add. And then you're also increasing the opportunity for chains to halt or to have problems of trading, blah blah blah, whatever. So that's the reason why I've always historically been against the idea of adding a lot of chains. But I think what's shifted my mind lately is that adding new chains is not about getting a lot more volume. It's about being more competitive in the industry. And while we didn't really need to be competitive in the industry for the first 3-4 years of THORChain's existence, because it took so long for other people to come into the market and challenge us in a realistic kind of way. I think now we have to think on a more competitive scale, and I think if we can supply a lot more routes and a lot more assets, which is why we're pushing for more chains and heading towards like intents to trade kind of the longer tail assets in these ecosystems. I think that's going to just make us more competitive, and we'll get more trade volume because of that.
I'm glad to hear that, Chad, because I feel pretty strongly about that. I've always had, like, by offering the long tail routes, they're like a lost leader, right? And so we're gonna get somebody looking for some random token. Oh, I can trade this on THORChain, I'll do it. And then that's how they discover THORChain, and then they're gonna bring over their Ethereum and Bitcoin volume as well. Right, because people want to trade in one place, right? You go to Home Depot, it has all of your home hardware supplies. You can buy tools, you can buy hammers, you can buy a washer and dryer. Everything for your home you can do in one store, right? You go to Walmart, you can buy food and clothes in the same place. And some of you might dread those places, but there is a reason why they're so huge and successful, because they provide like a huge one-stop shop. And if THORChain becomes that, I don't know how we can't succeed. It's to me, it's inevitable.
Yeah, and that's the experience that JP had recently, because he's working on this like VoltSig thing, right? And he wanted to integrate, swapping and all this kind of into VoltSig, but he wanted to do it with THORChain, and he literally couldn't even really do it because we didn't support enough chains or enough assets or whatever, and he ended up kind of forcing him down the kind of swap kit / aggregator kind of road, which he really didn't even want to do, because then that's just it makes the trades more expensive, and it creates like a middleman in effect. And he's like, we got to be more of like a one-stop shop thing where we can support all the most important blockchains out there. Get the top like 30 blockchains, something like this, right? And support every coin on those chains. And now you can, and also become very, very, very stable. So that we don't have very little downtime as much as we can muster. And then we can do a lot better and be much more competitive in the space,
Absolutely. Yeah. Great answer. And, I guess I'll try to, for me, 5-year outlook, I think we just keep doing what we're doing, right? We keep doing regular spaces like this. We keep the dialogue coming. We keep all arguments are accepted. We keep this platform, free speech, the ruthless meritocracy of ideas. I love that. I've always loved that. And I think if we just keep thinking ahead like we've always done, as we have always done, literally 2 years ahead, sometimes 3 years ahead of the competition, other people, we're going to be just fine. It's going to be constant effort. We're going to run into problems. We're going to have nuances. We're going to have issues. But I foresee a very beautiful and bright future. And that's not hopium. That's not optimism. I just think, as Kenton said, I don't see how it doesn't happen. But we have to stay true to that self. We can't rest upon our own laurels. We have to keep our head down, eyes forward, chin up. Just keep working, keep pushing, keep going. Make no assumptions, no optimism, no pessimism. Just ruthless work. I think we're going to get there. I think we're going to bring it home. I think we're well on our way, actually. So yeah.
Patriot, I brought up Thrax as a speaker. Maybe give him a chance to ask something.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Thrax, go ahead and check your mic. Let's see where you're here. I'll give you a few more seconds there, Thrax, to check your mic. If it doesn't work, we're going to move on. I see you. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, guys. Thank you for hosting such spaces. Okay, I'm a let's say a Bitcoin enthusiast since way then, yeah. Back then when I was in primary school, in my country it's primary school, high school, then college. So, but I remember I came to the limelight because I was selling Bitcoins in the streets, actually, with a big placard. But I wanted to ask because I'm creating an escrow for people who are trading online, because I realized everyone is going the direction where everyone wants to trade futures and other risky stuff, but you forget, like, you could make money selling gift cards and make crypto through it. You could like sell social media accounts, like it's so much. But I wanted to ask about call it THORChain, because I've been trying to integrate like a smart contract on it, but every time I'm on the testnet Cephalonia, I don't know what's the problem and how maybe THORChain could be of help to my project. Yeah, thank you.
So are you trying to build an app on THORChain?
Thrax, you're
Hey,
muted.
guys, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, I
he's
can hear you
asking
now.
you if you. Okay, he asked you if you're trying to build an app on THORChain, Thrax. I don't know if you heard that. We have some mic problems. Thrax, can you just say something, make a noise so I can know that you're there? Okay, well, I have you up here. Okay, Chad Barraford asked you, are you trying to make an app on THORChain? Is that what you're trying to do? An application?
No, not currently. Yeah.
Okay, well, then this is not a great space to ask that particular question, because when you say testnet, I don't even know what you're referring to. Is it Ethereum or Solana or something else?
Yeah, on Solana. Oh,
Oh,
so
okay.
I thought
Well,
maybe I
I
thought
don't think
maybe
I
THORChain.
go ahead.
Oh, shit.
Well, okay, so we're having a hard time here. So this is what I'm gonna do. Thrax, I followed you on my Patriot Sounds account. Let's get into DMs, and I'm gonna break it down, this idea fully, make sure we understand, and then if there's something there, I will definitely forward it. Okay. Just because Chad's limited on time, I want to make sure we get to Scott. We do have another speaker. Scott, would you go ahead and check your mic there, sir?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Oh, great to be on, you guys. I wanted to talk about optics and the language we use as a community to describe ourselves, and just tell you about a brief couple experiences I had that kind of really got me thinking about that. I come from the biotech space, entrepreneur there. I've talked to high net worth individuals, investors, business development, people from huge companies like L'Oreal and Johnson & Johnson and stuff. And that's what gets me going with this stuff, because I so want us to succeed. I was talking to a friend of mine who, I won't say his name, but he's a billionaire. He invests in stuff and starts companies. He asked me how my crypto stuff was doing. I said, it's down, it's still trading sideways, but they're building this exciting stuff. You know, it's unique in the world. He says, oh man, tell me about it. I said, well, and he knows a little bit about crypto. I said, yeah, it's like they're bringing the cypherpunk ideals into reality. And there was this kind of pause. Oh, cypherpunk. Oh, well, hey man, those little things turn out sometimes. I think that could be great for you. And ordered some sake. We're having sushi, and like all of a sudden was just dismissive. And I was really upset, like, what the hell? And he just kept steering the conversation away, and I didn't even get to tell him about it. So I said, all right, something about the language I used just didn't work. And then, wouldn't you know, a week later, another friend of mine who's huge high net worth investor is sitting there talking to me and asked me the same question. I said, I'm going to phrase it differently. I said, man, this stuff that I'm invested in, they are connecting the entire crypto sphere with this stuff called intents. They are building an entire omniverse, everything that Binance does, NFTs, everything. And they have privacy, secret, secure. It's like Binance. It's like James Bond. It's like THORSday. It's all of it. And I tapped his phone right on your phone. And there was this long silence, and he goes, what? I said, yeah. He goes, well, what, who's funding this? Like expecting me to throw out this huge corporation. I said, no, there are these two projects that are the Rails, and a third one that's the app layer. And he goes, well, tell me what, and he grabs a little Post-it pad and starts, what's this called? THORChain and Ruggiero, and like, holy shit, right? Sorry, excuse my language. The words we use to describe ourselves and stuff have a huge impact on these high net worth investors. I wanted to bring this up because I hear the term cypherpunk thrown around, and I know in crypto with non-normies, it's this exciting kind of holy grail to achieve. But words like that for high net worth investors who aren't familiar with that just sound like, oh, it's some college kid who watches, manga in his mom's basement trying to stick it to the man. And the thing I wanted to bring up was using words like omniverse and connecting the entire crypto sphere. Those are the type of things these big high net worth investors love. That's what gets them intrigued, and all on your phone. One-stop shop for everything crypto. That's huge. The other thing is, just as a community, for our identity, for this stack we're part of, it's THORChain, it's Maya, it's Ruggiero, it's Mocha, it's Voltisig, that we are part of something so huge that I think we should kick around the possibility of coming up with a name and a promotion for the stack itself, because that is so unique in the entire world as we're bringing it online, that this is the time to really look at this stuff, because this really is a one-stop shop for everything on your wallet, safe, secure, that doesn't exist anywhere else. And the cypherpunk ideal is essentially, we're tired of the man looking over our shoulder. We're tired of having to use banks, have everything look. We want privacy. We want to be able to do what we want without them looking at us. Well, as soon as Mocha connected with, Maya and I think THORChain and came online, we essentially achieved that. Because you have, with Maya and Zcash, I think shielded swaps are up now. From soup to nuts, you essentially have that unbroken chain where you could get a little crypto, move into a privacy coin, then buy something at retail and no one can look over your shoulder. So we are Cypherpunk Plus now. We did it. We built it for them. What we're building now, especially with the privacy, that's the type of thing I could see entire governments wanting to do crazy cool stuff like, hey, we want to take our sovereign wealth fund and diversify a portion of it into crypto, but we don't want word to get out and someone to front run us and drive up the price. Why don't we use this private shielded one-stop shop, have a bunch of our treasury officers get a bunch of phones, maybe a bunch of multi-sigs, break it into pieces and move it there, and now we won't get front run. Well, that's something that is now suitable for everyone, from servers to stockbrokers, from secret agents to sovereign wealth funds. We are so beyond cypherpunk. We are everything now. So we need to start talking about ourselves as, we are building the one-stop shop for the crypto omniverse on your phone. And it's all about privacy as well. That is something so unique. We need to really be careful of our language and make sure we're not shortchanging ourselves, because for us now, and we did it, cypherpunk is in the rearview mirror. We're so far beyond it. And I think we need to be mindful of that, because an old mentor of mine used to tell me, see it, believe it, speak it, achieve it. That we have to create the narrative with the appropriate words to really paint the picture that's gonna define who we are going forward. We control that now because we're crafting it now. This is the time to think of these things and build it before everything comes online. We are one unified stack that's world beating, just like THORChain is world beating as far as the cross chain with the intents and everything. Let's have these conversations now. And some of the things I think about, and it's so exciting, it's like hard to speak. We have Maya and THORChain and Rujira and Voltisig. What if we create an identity as, some kind of Omni stack or Pantheon stack or some cool fucking name, or Prism stack, like Chad was saying? Maybe you come together and all say, hey, why don't we have an agreement where we have a little council that is in charge of promoting the stack as a whole technology stack. I'm sorry, that word's so repetitive now. And maybe we each take, 1% of our budget. If we all agree to have 5% of our marketing budget, like we do at least for marketing, maybe 1% of that from each, so it's proportionate, goes to a unified marketing effort for this world-class stack that we are all now a part of, that now we're leveraging the kind of incredible nature of this stack in its entirety, along with our unique our unique features and capabilities we bring for each project, that we have our own separate marketing, our own tokens, but we also have a unified, and THORChain, we do all these things and we're part of this incredible stack, and these are our partners. And then we have kind of a synergistic effect with the marketing and a second way to market ourselves as part of this incredible stack, along with being an incredible standalone project. That, I was wondering if you might just talk this around a little. What do you think about my thoughts on language and optics? What do you think about the possibility of creating a synergy and a separate identity as part of a unique world-changing tech stack. I would really love to hear some people's thoughts on this. Okay, I'm done. Yeah.
Your thoughts on what our stack should be?
Oh, just the thought on maybe advertising the stack itself as such an incredible kind of technology that it's kind of at the end going all the way down to a vendor with something like Mocha, but also it is the Rails, Maya, and THORChain, but and this incredible app layer, the Rujira, but all of it is really connected together. I mean, you're bringing it online and bringing the features together. It's all going to be available in your wallet, basically, on your phone if you want. That incredible stack is this amazing world-beating thing that's equally exciting, but it is greater than just THORChain or greater than just Rujira or Mocha. Even though you're all impressive in your own right, could that have its own identity that's advertised as well? What do you think about something like that?
I mean, that's a good marketing question. I'm not a marketing guy, so I'm not sure I'm the best one to answer it. And maybe Kenton would be, or Reggie, if he was here, would be another person. But I think what you're proposing is that instead of you having separate entities like THORChain and Ruji and whatever else out there, you kind of have a more single kind of brand that overarches everything and all those different entities into a single larger brand. And there's pros and cons to that for sure. I think one of the cons is to get everybody to kind of coalesce on a single brand and agree what that brand's going to look like or stand for, or what its kind of motto is, if you want to call it that. Would be challenging. I do like the idea of making sure that we have separate teams for separate components of this system, because it means that the individuals or projects can come and can go. It can have a different opinion on X, Y, or Z, and which is to me is like all kind of healthy in a sense, and then it kind of ensures that we maintain a decentralized feeling of it all, because there's different groups and different leaders within different parties. Like, Code Hans is kind of one of the primary leaders of Ruji, and obviously I'm one of the primary leaders on the THORChain side. And in Code, and Hans and I, we agree on a lot of things, and I'm sure we disagree on some things as well, and that's all healthy and a good thing in the end, I would argue. I don't know, but I'm not a marketing expert, so I'm probably not the best person to answer it, but that's my knee-jerk reaction.
And Chad, really quick, I'd make a slight adjustment to how you're seeing it, as not that there's an overarching thing that then rules the things under it. It's more that you are, say you're advertising THORChain as what THORChain is, but also that you're part of this tech stack, and that you're not advertising so much what this tech stack stands for as just what it's capable of, the capability it is bringing right onto your phone, that, hey, we're, our partners and I together allow all this craziness on your phone separate from what we're doing. Like, we contribute to this cool thing on the side too, that, holy smokes, look what it does. Then it doesn't have to rule you or be something you're answering to. It's more just something you contribute to the totality of that's so world beating,
Yeah. Historically, we've kind of relied on partners and wallets and integrating partners to provide that to some degree. And I think we've had, for the most part, I think we've had a lot of success with that model. That doesn't mean there's not room for improvement or what have you. But yeah, I don't have a great answer for your question, to be honest. I don't know if Kenton does. He's more on the marketing side, so maybe he has a better view than me.
I can comment. Just so you guys know, I've got a hard stop in a few minutes. But yeah, Scott, I totally agree with words matter. But I think maybe you got to know your audience. So like, I think the cypherpunk word does resonate with people, and they do like that. I think crypto is actually starving to make crypto cypherpunk again. But I totally get it. Not everybody resonates with that. I met a high net worth individual last night who's a cypherpunk, and we were talking about THORChain, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I like THORChain, but when they stopped working on Monero, I stopped paying attention because of if you're not going to do Monero, I don't want to be involved. And I told him like, well, dude, it's happening now. Like it's coming. He's like, no way. And so I was filling him in on everything that's happened over the last couple of years, and like he wasn't worried bothered by the THORFi default or Bybit or anything like that. He's like, man, this is huge. You guys get Monero going, like that's going to be huge. And then telling him about perps and everything coming on the app layer. He's like, no way. And he was stoked. And so so I agree. Getting the message out in front of people, once they start, if they're actually open to listening, it'll resonate with people. And then your one giant tech stack. That's why I think we should start positioning THORChain as a layer 1, and that we have all these things built on THORChain, and show that this is, THORChain is more than just Rune or THORChain. There's all these other projects. Everything's being built on top, and not necessarily promote anyone individually, but promote the entire ecosystem. That there's this huge ecosystem, of all these different apps, all these different developers building on top of THORChain. So yeah, I agree with that.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me come on and just kind of share some of this stuff. And it's nice to hear a high net worth individual who gets the cypherpunk thing and doesn't dismiss you like he dismissed me. Okay.
Well,
okay.
you got to remember, right? Like the high net worth individuals in crypto are, the billionaires in crypto are cypherpunks. Like the guys who made their money, everyone always, it's funny, whenever you meet someone in crypto, they always say when they started, right? When did you get into crypto? Oh, 2017 or 2014. It's like, it's kind of like telling people what car you drive or something. But so if you ever meet people that are in the class of, 2011 to 2016, I mean, they're arguably a cypherpunk. And, they're the ones who have all the money right now, right? Like they made, fortunes, right? And they're the guys who are in it for the tech. A lot of the new people in crypto nowadays are just, from what I can tell, it's pretty watered down. I meet people who are new to crypto that they're totally cool with surveillance and censorship and KYC, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing in crypto? Like, do you not get it? Like, what the whole point of it is? But anyway, but they're greedy. They're here to make money, and which is fine, great. They're welcome. Which I suspect your high net worth billionaire friend, he's just in it to make money. He doesn't care about freedom or the tech, right? And so I'm not saying we shouldn't talk to those people, but like I don't think we should also bend over backwards to cater to them, because it's kind of like if pretending to be somebody else to date a girl, it doesn't work. You end up living a lie, and you're never truly yourself. You're never truly happy, and you never truly get the women you want. And I think it's the same for THORChain. Like we don't necessarily have to, blurt out that we're cypherpunk and all this and that, but we shouldn't also hide from what we do. We should be proud of what we bring to the table. So yeah.
Well, Kenton, I'm certainly not saying to hide the capabilities we're bringing, which includes kind of what cypherpunk always wanted, the privacy and the just the words we use to convey the content. They can have a huge impact. And like you said, I think maybe it's more getting to know your audience, and maybe this is someone who's saying privacy, multi-chain, omniverse world beater is going to be more important than, we achieve cypherpunk. That, maybe those are the words that are going to resonate with them better. But yeah, thank you. You've given me a huge amount of time, and I really appreciate it. I love you guys, love everything we're doing. So thank you for letting me just talk about all this stuff.
Yeah. Hey,
awesome. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, guys, I think you can keep going. I need to jump off, but I think you can keep going.
No,
with
we're
that
going to end it. I think Chad's got to go too, and I got to go take care of my dad. I think this is a great time to end it. So, Kenton, I think this is perfect. This is perfect. And yeah, thank you, Scott. Know your audience and curate it. You want something to say, Kenton, before you go? I don't want to. Okay, he had to leave. Hey, thanks, Kenton. Take care, buddy. Chad, do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap it here?
No. Stay tuned, and I'll see everybody next Thursday. We'll have more updates and more things to talk about. And thanks everybody for showing up, and hope you enjoyed the convo.
Yes. And thank you again for your time, man. 2.5 hours. That's a long time for you to give. I really appreciate it. There was a lot of meat on the bones today. This was a very, very great conversation. Thank you to all the speakers, Boone, everyone else, Scott, who came up. Just real quick, guys, before we end the space here, we're going to have, in 2 days, we're going to have Houdini Swap on Saturday, and then the following week, November 1st, we're going to have Redacted. And then new thing, November 8th, I've been working this out. We're going to do Maya Protocol. We're going to do our hot girlfriend. Yeah. We're going to have her on stage. So this is great, Yeah. Well, what's funny about that, dude, is at the beginning we were calling her our hot Mexican sister. I'm like, you guys, we got to stop that. That doesn't sound right. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? More chromosomes is not better, right? That's not all right. You know what I'm saying? Let's call her a hot Mexican girlfriend. That's what my protocol is. It's not our hot sister. So stop it, you weirdos. I'm not the one that coined it.
Our hot Mexicana.
There you go. There you go. Our Latina. That's what she is. It's awesome. Okay, guys.
All right, guys. Good chatting.
Hey, God bless you, sir. God bless you all. Everyone have a great weekend. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.